Okay, so picture this. It's 1924, the Jazz Age,
Oh, yeah.
the Charleston Flappers, all that.
Yeah.
And right in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
you've got a secret group of men. They're gathering, risking everything,
Yeah.
for their right to love.
Wow.
Now, this isn't Stonewall, not even close. We're
Right.
talking like 4 decades earlier, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going deep into Henry Gerber's story.
Okay.
This guy, he imagined gay rights back when, well, most people didn't even know that was a thing. Activism like that.
It is amazing how often history kind of surprises us.
Yeah.
You think these movements, they just like appear,
Yeah.
but really it starts much earlier.
Right.
Whispers, secret meetings.
Like those Chicago guys.
Exactly.
It's like finding, I don't know, a hidden room in an old house.
Yeah.
All these secret stories just waiting there.
Mm-hmm.
So Gerber, he was Bavarian.
Yeah. Born back in 1892.
Wow.
His name was Joseph Henry Dittmar originally. Came to the U.S. in 1913, landed in Chicago. Even back then, Chicago had this, lively gay subculture.
Lively but hidden, I bet.
Oh, yeah. Under the surface. Speakeasies, jazz clubs. But underneath, this whole other world.
Wow. So, like, what was daily life really like back then for gay men? It wasn't exactly, come out and be yourself time, was it?
Not at all, no. Most states, they had these sodomy laws. Homosexual acts straight up illegal.
Oh, wow.
And they enforced them. Arrests, fines, even jail time. You could lose it all, your job, your family, just for being, well, yourself.
So it's not just society disapproving. It was real legal danger.
Absolutely.
That makes Gerber's story even more remarkable.
Right.
And he went to Germany at some point, didn't he?
Yeah. After World War I, he served in the U.S. Army of Occupation.
Okay.
This is from 1920 to 23. And here's where things get interesting. He runs into this surprisingly progressive movement.
Really?
Yeah, for homosexual emancipation.
Wow, the 1920s. That's way ahead of what most people would think.
Oh, absolutely. And a key figure was this guy, Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld.
Okay.
He was a pioneer, physician, sexologist.
Wow.
He ran the Institute for Sexual Science in Berlin. And get this, he didn't think homosexuality was a mental illness.
Really? Not like most doctors back then.
Nope. Totally different approach. For him, it was scientific. Research, data, advocating for legal changes, social reform.
Mm-hmm.
He even offered early forms of what we call gender-affirming care at his institute. Unheard of in the U.S. back then.
Wow. So you got Gerber. He sees this openness in Germany, this whole movement based on science and acceptance. And then he comes back to the U.S. in 23. That must have been a huge shock.
Oh, yeah. Going from a place with organizations, publications, even scientists backing gay rights,
Right.
back to a place where holding hands with the same sex could get you arrested.
Jeez.
Yeah.
What must have been going through his mind? Like, this is how it could be.
It's tough to know for sure, but we know his time in Germany really affected him, like kind of lit a fire for his activism.
Yeah.
He saw how apathetic a lot of gay men were in Chicago, the fear, the silence. He decided he couldn't just accept it.
He had to do something.
Exactly.
Inspired by what he'd seen in Germany.
Right.
But how do you even begin to organize for gay rights
Yeah.
in 1920s America? That seems, impossible almost.
Incredibly difficult. Dangerous, too. Gerber knew the risks, but he was determined. He even reached out to Margaret Sanger.
The birth control advocate.
Yeah, hoping for an ally,
Wow.
but she wasn't interested.
Wow. Even Margaret Sanger. She was radical for her time, but not ready for gay rights.
Shows you how far ahead Gerber was thinking.
He was a true pioneer.
He was. Despite the fear, the danger, he found 6 other men willing to stand with him. December 1924, in a small Chicago apartment,
Okay.
they founded the Society for Human Rights.
The first gay rights organization in the U.S.
As far as we know, yeah, right there in Chicago.
Amazing.
They even started a newsletter, Friendship and Freedom. But they had to use code words, be super careful about who saw it. Back then, you could get in huge trouble just for having, obscene materials.
Makes sense. So reading their newsletter, it's striking how radical their goals were back then. They
Yeah.
weren't just asking for tolerance.
Right.
They wanted full legal equality.
Yeah, repeal those sodomy laws, educate the public, basically create a society where gay people could live openly, freely, without fear.
Incredibly ambitious for 1924.
Yeah.
Decades before the civil rights movement, women's lib, Stonewall.
Gerber was ahead of his time, no question.
Yeah. But tragically, it all got cut short. Just 8 months after they start, the Society for Human Rights, boom, police raid.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just a random checkup.
Targeted. They think they used a planted powder puff as evidence against Gerber.
A powder puff. Seriously.
It's absurd, but that almost ruined his life.
It's heartbreaking. All that courage, all that progress just stopped.
Yeah.
What happened to him after the raid?
Arrested. Charged with deviant behavior. His name all over the newspapers. Sensationalized headlines.
Oh.
The charges were dropped eventually. Illegal arrest. But the damage was done.
So even though technically cleared, he still paid a huge price.
Absolutely. Job, savings, all the society's records, gone.
Wow.
It shows you how easily progress can be wiped out, how fragile these early movements were.
Makes you realize how brave those guys were just to meet up, risking everything. And you wonder, what if the raid hadn't happened? What if they could have kept going?
Haunts me too, that question. It's impossible to say. Maybe they could have shifted public opinion,
Yeah.
laid the groundwork for later movements, but their story almost vanished completely. Almost, but not quite. You know, it's like those old photo albums tucked away in the attic.
Yeah.
They change how you see your family history.
Right.
Gerber's story does that for the whole LGBTQ plus rights movement.
And like those photos, sometimes they show, well, uncomfortable truths, right, about our families. I mean, Gerber's story, it reflects some of the complexities of that early movement, the internal tensions, you know.
Absolutely. We celebrate his courage, his pioneering work, but his views, they were a product of his time. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he wasn't really accepting of bisexuals. And his vision for the movement, it focused mostly on gay men.
So his vision was more limited than how we see sexual orientation and gender identity today.
Exactly. His focus was on gay men's rights. That reflects the limits of the homophile movement back then,
Right.
before the broader LGBTQ plus identities and terms we use now.
Yeah, it's interesting how language changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how those changes, they reflect our changing understanding and acceptance.
For sure. And it reminds us that even people fighting for progress, they can have blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
History's rarely simple, full of contradictions. Gerber's story is a perfect example.
It makes you think, what if the society hadn't been shut down? Could they have broadened their view, become more inclusive?
Tough to say. Imagine if they'd had the chance to keep working, engage in those dialogues,
Yeah.
learn and grow along with the movement.
Right. I mean, this was way before Stonewall. Just talking about homosexuality was taboo.
Exactly. And their newsletter, remember?
Oh, yeah.
Coded language, the risks they took just to express their basic humanity, it's incredible.
They were trailblazers.
No question. Challenging these deep social norms, risking arrest, being ostracized, just to fight for a world where they could be themselves?
It shows us how far we've come, how much we owe to those who came before.
Definitely. And their story highlights something important. We can't judge the past solely by today's standards.
Right, right. We have to consider the context, the social and legal pressures, the risks they took, the courage to simply be themselves in a world that condemned them. Just trying to build a movement in that climate.
Amazing.
Yeah, really awe-inspiring.
And it shows us that change doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It's a process, setbacks, victories.
Gerber's story is like just one chapter in a much longer book. It's almost lost, but rediscovered. And now it helps us see the whole LGBTQ plus rights movement in a richer, more nuanced way.
Exactly.
His story reminds us that the fight for equality, it's ongoing, like a relay race.
Yeah.
Each generation picks up the torch.
Yeah, and each generation faces new challenges, new opportunities.
The struggle didn't end with Gerber or Stonewall. It's still going on.
Absolutely, a continuous journey towards justice and inclusion.
When you think about Gerber's life, it's striking how much he achieved despite everything. Even after the raid, he didn't completely give up.
No way. He kept writing, used pseudonyms, articles, even a correspondence club called Contacts.
Contacts happened.
Yeah, it helped connect gay men all over the country.
Yeah.
Think about that. Back then, feeling isolated was so common for LGBTQ plus people.
Like an early form of social media. Yeah.
Exactly, combating the shame, the stigma, reminding them they weren't alone. And in 1934, he wrote this essay
Okay.
criticizing Hitler's persecution of homosexuals, even under a fake name that was incredibly risky.
He never stopped speaking out against injustice, no matter the cost.
Which is his character, right?
Yeah.
He saw what was happening in Germany, the Nazis rounding up gay people. He refused to be silent, even when it put him in danger.
Gerber might not be as famous as some other figures in the movement, but his impact was huge.
Huge. He helped pave the way for the more visible activism that came later, his courage challenging the status quo. We should all admire that.
Imagine if he hadn't faced those consequences. The Society for Human Rights, it might have thrived. Who knows how history would be different?
Fascinating to think about. But even though his organization was short-lived, his legacy, it's still here.
Right.
He planted a seed. And that seed grew into this powerful movement for change.
And that's worth celebrating. His story shows that even small acts of resistance can have a ripple effect.
Yeah, they inspire others to fight for a better world.
Exactly.
And it reminds us that history is full of unsung heroes. People whose work might have been overlooked, forgotten,
Right.
but they still shaped the world we live in.
So, after this deep dive into Henry Gerber, what does it all mean for us today? Why should we care about this guy from almost a century ago?
It's not just history, it's about understanding where our struggles today come from. Gerber's story, it reminds us that the fight for equality, it's still going on.
And we all have a part to play.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's incredible when you think about it. One person, almost forgotten, but the impact, Gerber's courage, it's really inspiring.
Yeah, totally. And something to remember is, while his story is unique, there's a pattern there. Throughout history, always people challenging norms, fighting for what they believe in, even when it seems, well, impossible.
Like planting seeds, hoping they'll grow into something big.
Yeah, that's it. Sometimes those seeds, they lay dormant for years, decades even,
Okay.
until the conditions are right.
Like waiting for the right moment to sprout.
Exactly. And Gerber's a perfect example. Maybe he didn't see those big changes he fought for, but his actions, they built the foundation for what came next.
He laid the groundwork.
Right. And it reminds us change takes time. Progress, it happens bit by bit. It's easy to get discouraged looking at the world today, all the injustices.
Yeah.
But Gerber shows us that even small acts, brave acts, they can ripple outwards. Inspire others to take up the cause, carry the torch.
Like a relay race, passing the baton.
Exactly. Each generation building on the last. The fight for LGBTQ plus rights, it didn't start with Gerber, it didn't end with Stonewall. It's ongoing. A tapestry woven from all these individual stories.
And that's why it's so important to learn those stories. Remember those who came before.
Yeah.
Honor their struggles, their sacrifices.
Absolutely.
They made our path possible. And now it's our turn to keep going, fighting for a future where everyone has dignity, respect.
Their stories, they show us we're not alone in this fight. This whole lineage of courageous people behind us, their strength, it can inspire us to keep going even when it's tough.
So we've gone deep on Henry Gerber.
Yeah.
His life, his work. What's the one thing you want our listeners to take away? What thoughts should they carry with them?
I'd say it's the power of hope. Even in the darkest times, against all odds, Gerber never lost it. He believed in a better world and he fought for it. That's a powerful message for all of us, whatever we're struggling with.
Hope, it can really drive change. And Gerber's story proves it. So to everyone listening, remember Henry Gerber. Remember his courage, his determination, his belief in a better future, and let that inspire you. Keep fighting for justice, for equality, for a world where everyone can be themselves freely.
And don't forget, your voice matters. Speak up, speak out, never stop fighting for the world you want to see. Gerber's story shows that each of us, we can do a difference.
And on that note, that's a wrap on another deep dive. Hope you enjoyed exploring Henry Gerber with us, his life, his legacy. Be sure to subscribe for more fascinating journeys into the past. We'll be uncovering hidden stories, the people who dared to challenge the way things were, and shape the world we live in now.
Thanks for listening.